What's in a veil? Firstly, thank you to all the ladies who participated in the recent Instagram survey with regards to how many wear the veil for the entire liturgy or partially or not, as well as the shared responses, which were really fascinating as to what comes to mind when you do wear the veil and why.
So a veil or a mantilla is a lace fabric a woman wears over her hair during the liturgy. But do we really understand what it means, its significance, and why it is worn? There's a huge misconception that a woman wears this to prevent others from being distracted by her beauty and causing lustful thoughts by others in church and during the liturgy. Now, this is the go-to explanation used, even by organizations selling veils, which creates this carnal or even sexual tone about women. This is absolutely wrong, and it goes against orthodoxy. Our church is a mystical yet existential revelation of God, not a carnal entity. Yes, we do worship with our five senses, but this does not mean that we interpret how we worship with mundane and carnal explanations. Otherwise, we polarize the spiritual experience, even of veiling.
Veiling is a living liturgical experience. I do appreciate you listening to what's coming up next, so you don't miss out on any key information. And pardon me if I do miss something. I'm not an expert of anything. I'm just a servant. But if you do have to go, maybe you can meditate on this statement. Veiling is a living liturgical experience. To give you a bit of origin history, the head cover goes back to the times of ancient Mesopotamia, and it is found in a stone law code dating back 1400 BC. It enforces women of that civilization to veil themselves in public unless they are prostitutes. The latter must not cover her hair or she will be severely punished. Later on in history, when Moses receives the law from God, it included the code on how women and men shall dress. It says, "A woman shall not wear a man's clothing, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God." This law has a different intention to Assyrian law. It intends to protect the dignity and distinction between men and women. Whilst God pronounced the creation of man and woman as equally very good, he does not intend a man to be like a woman, nor vice versa. We are all united in our humanity, yes, but we are distinct, whether it's by gender, personality, even fingerprints. So the veil became a feminine dress in Jewish society, distinct from Egyptians who dressed alike. So perhaps, the Jewish society accepted this law a lot quicker than many other laws because their father, the father of Hebrew people is Abraham, and he came from Mesopotamia, from the city of Ur, and his culture would have influenced generations of his people. So Jewish women wore the veil since the beginning, organically continuing with the Christians and well into the next 2,000 years after Christ to this day. So what does the New Testament say? After all, Christ fulfilled the law. So the common verse about head covering comes from 1 Corinthians, a letter written by Paul aimed at an audience of Gentiles. So imagine the Las Vegas of that time. That was Corinth. These people were pagans. They had very different laws and conduct. They even practiced temple prostitution, and when needed, they sacrificed babies. So they were well versed in ancient Greek philosophy, and that also promoted homosexuality and transvestites and transgenders and all that sort of stuff. He wrote to them was also vastly different to the way he spoke to Judean women in other letters. But later in chapter 11, tones of Deuteronomy and Genesis make their way into the letter of Corinthians to the Corinthians when discussing conduct in church and liturgy. Paul was certainly trying to get the Corinthians to catch up with codes and conduct that were adopted by the Jews. So these are some of the verses that I will make mention, but I do encourage you to read chapter 11 in the letter to Corinthians, the first one. "Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. For if a woman is not covered, let her also be shorn." For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Let's see what St. John Chrysostom says about this. He makes note of the unlawfulness of exchanging garments between men and women, and this is what he says. For if exchange of garments be not lawful, so that neither she should be clad with a cloak, nor he with a mantle or a veil. He's not even allowed to have long hair, because that is very similar to a woman's veil. My favorite takeout is that the veil reminds the woman of her virtues, and especially her humility. And I believe that this is a temptation of many women, even mine, to go to church with, my best clothes and jewelry and all that sort of stuff. And the veil helps us. It brings us down to earth. And this is what John Chrysostom says. For it induces her to look down and be ashamed and preserve entire her proper virtue. This is even echoed by the Peter's letter, the 1 Peter 3:3-4. Do not let your adornment be merely outward, arranging the hair, wearing gold, or putting on fine apparel. Rather, let it be the hidden person of the heart, with the incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. So having said that, we've reviewed the scriptures, we heard what our church fathers have to say about women covering in church liturgy. This brings us to a really important consideration when it comes to wearing a veil. That consideration is an existential and liturgic experience, and this is where we need to be at. The veil grounds us, and if anything, it switches off our very own inner distractions by helping us experience humility. This is a huge opposition to the myth of women wear it to stop men from having lustful thoughts. If anything, we can experience a spiritual struggle when wearing a veil. We ourselves can become judgmental of others not wearing it, inflating our pride because we feel more devout. For those of us experiencing this, transform that pride into humble thoughts. You see, it's up to the individual to control their passions, not someone else to do it for you. By humbling ourselves with the veil, we can be reminded to work on our inner purity, and that has a transformative power. This involves purifying our hearts and our minds to change. The word in Greek is metanoia. We do this through humility, prayer, love, faith, and gentle spirit. Then we will be worthy of wearing the veil. Once we have the veil on, we reinforce our liturgical experience. We wear it as an expression of faith, in solidarity with God, in reverence to His holy church, for the sake of the gospel, and of course for the Eucharist. In the meantime, while we work on ourselves and empower our liturgical experience, we become role models and ministers to others. So without knowing it, we may start inspiring others, other women, other little girls, So remember also that modesty isn't just the veil. And I mean, can you imagine if we wear the veil over our heads, but we're wearing a miniskirt or a crop top or something, So we need to ensure that we are dressing modestly, properly, wearing the right clothes to church. I remember back in the days, they used to call it wear your Sunday best, and we used to always wear, our favorite dresses, and we put our kids we still do. I still put my kids in their best clothes for Sunday, and it's always a beautiful dress, but nothing ever short, or revealing. So yeah, remember, modesty isn't just the veil, and I really hope everyone knows that by now. And are we really just imitating the Virgin Mary just by dressing like her? We also need to think about that, because some people think that that's what it's about. But remember that all Jewish women wore the veil, and none of them were as pure as the one, the Mother of God. Okay, so to imitate the Virgin Mary, we imitate her imitation of Jesus Christ. And that imitation is sacrificial love. With that in mind, when we do wear the veil, we wear Christ. By experiencing inner purity, we imitate Christ. I will leave you with this liturgical prayer that is chanted or spoken by both men and women. and is done before Holy Communion. How shall I, whom unworthy, enter into the splendor of your saints, if I should dare to enter into the bridal chamber? My clothing betrays me, since it is not a wedding garment, and being bound up, I shall be caught out by the angels. Cleanse, O Lord, the filth of my soul, and save me, as you are the one who loves mankind. In your love, Lord, cleanse my soul and save me.